any society would always have like if you start asking your children in the like what will you be when you grow up, so the person will have a goal and how you are going to achieve. We will always talk about the means that are conforming to the norms of the society, right? That I will study hard and become a doctor tomorrow. So goal was to become a doctor and study hard is the proper thing, right? Now he says that there are cultural system and there is a social system to it. Cultural system, as I explained you, there is a goal, there is a mean that you achieve that goal through a proper mean, and there is a social system. Social system actually gives you an opportunity to achieve those goals, right? Now your system is, your society is actually giving you the proper means to achieve those goals. They have set up the goals for you, but have you got those opportunity? That actually calls for a social system, right? Now this, they are trying to, this structure, that social structure that we are talking about, the Merton says that each one of us or anybody in the society react according to that cultural system and behave according to a social structure, right? So now there were means, I told you the first stage is the conformity, that there are goals in the society, you go by proper means of the society and you achieve those goals. Now there are other set of people who have to go achieve the same goals, but they do not have the proper means to achieve those goals. And what they do is they innovate new kinds of methods to achieve those goals. Goals would remain the same, but means would be very different. If I take the same example of doctor and all that I just told you, that you want to become a doctor, so you study. The thing is, when you are writing exam, you ask somebody else to write for you. You give money to somebody who will do something for you. Exactly. So what you have done is you have got innovative methods to achieve the same goals that was set up by the society. So he said this he calls as innovation. In innovation, what happens is goals are same as set up by the society, but innovative methods are the means are what you actually how you actually try to achieve the goal. Then there is then he said there is a third stage also, where the people are actually not interested in the means are very good. Okay, the thing is they will say right. The thing is, when Warburton was trying to explain this, he could not explain it properly when he says that goals are missing, but means are there. There is no goal, but when you people are actually talking about it, okay, we are okay with the system of the society, and the thing is, do you want to achieve that goal? That time he was not very clear that what he tried to explain. But different thinkers after that, they were trying to say that how you can actually have good means, but no goals. Especially it happens when we are actually working for any kind of, for example, there is an accident that takes place, right? In her case, the best example was what she just talked about. You said like you talk about the things, yes, I'm going to do this, but there is no goal, there is no action taken. Somebody met with an accident, you say like he should be taken to the hospital, he should be done that, but like why don't you take, I have a meeting right now. So means are there, like proper means, things should be done according to these means, but when it comes to actually goal attainment, there are no goals. So he said this is a stage which is also very dangerous also and sometimes strange. And then he talks about the fourth kind of a thing, which he says calls as retreatism. And he says that in this manner, people have given up the goals, like they are so fed up with the society that you have made those goals, you have made those means, I don't want to be part of these means and goals. So the only problem with them is they do not agree to either the means or to the goals, but they don't do anything about it. So the thing is, for example, hippies were always taken in this and drug addicts, these are the people, they said like, I am not okay with the system. But like, what are you doing about the system? I don't want to do anything about it. Then it will change, I'll be part of the system. So what you're doing is, even the means are absent here, even the goals are absent. You are not accepting the goals of the society, you are not accepting the means of the society, you have given up on everything. So this stage is also like, we have a lot of people, when we talk about the criminal activities or some activities which are not accepted by the society, so-called anti-social activities, and these people tend to be part of this retreatism category, and because they are not conforming to means of the society, even if then like any kind of crime would take place, let me ask this person, because he is not conforming to any kind of, means that their label is put on the person, so that includes the labeling theory also. And then comes the revolutionary, the fifth category. They are also not okay with the means of the society. They are also not okay with the goals of the society. But they are not silent about everything as the retreat people were. They want to throw up the system and come up with a new system. He says that each individual, he here is Robert Merton, says that each individual actually react to the needs and the goals of the society in this way, and accordingly he finds a place in the society. So whatever the needs and goals are there, and he adapt to those modes of adaptation, and then he
so I think a lot of criminality actually Merton became very relevant in the context when he proposed these models. Criminality in those times, Merton founded these models, is largely attributed to innovative, to Hegelian and all those models. In fact, if you look at the Indian context, innovative model or innovation model, a lot of corruption. Corruption is a nagging issue which no theorist could ever define the undercurrents and underlying issues in corruption. We are struggling with this menace, but probably if you look at the innovation, you will find that people have refused to be culturally sanctioned means, though they have agreed to the targets or the objects that they want to achieve. So this particular model explains a lot of deviance. And Merton says that it is a strain, it is this pressure of the social structure, because Wilkin was a social structuralist. So he was saying the seeds of crime are to be located in the system, in the social structure. So I think with this, we go on to Deepshita.
Yes. So the thing is, this was Merton, but if you see, that was the individualistic approach to the crime. Now the Cohen is a thinker who criticized Merton, saying that this was the reaction to the individual, but there is a reaction towards by the groups also. So how there is a subcultural system that ma'am will be explaining. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I think before we delve into the theories, it is very important to understand crime and deviance is part of society. I think you understand. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So basically, when we talk about deviance, it is important to understand what is society. Okay, so when we talk about sociology is all about the study of society. So we can say that society is an organized system where the individual members are held up in a network of relationships, and these relationships are guided by certain norms, certain rules and regulations. The society tends to impose these rules and regulations upon the individual members, and it expects that all the individual members will follow these rules. When we talk about the formulation of these, we call them informal rules. Laws are formal rules which are standardized, which are written. But if we talk about informal rules like norms, models, these are more effective in society, and they tend to have a very important control in individual behavior. This is called social control. So, basically what happens that when the social control system becomes weak in the society, the rate of deviance or crime starts increasing. I think you must be able to differentiate between what is deviance and what is crime. Can you tell what is the basic difference? What is deviance and what is crime?
And deviance is when you exclude yourself from the society norm and you commit an act which is in the nature of the society. It is called an act which is for to which the penalties are the state put penalties to it. So the crime is where the person knows about it, or crime is an act actually.
Basically, yeah.
Deviance is basically something different from the ordinary, and that could be positive as well as negative. While crime can be negative only. So crime basically is a form of deviance, but a negative form of deviance.
See, basically when we talk, in technical terms, if you say deviance is deviating from the norms that have been laid down by the society. Okay, so deviance is a broader term. There can be acts which may not be criminal in nature. Crime is very, very specific. It is very technically laid down. The law is very specific about what is crime, which act of commission, which act of omission is crime, that is very, very clearly laid down. So there is a very, very important difference between deviance and crime. Sociology talks more about deviance, and the various sociological theories that have been laid down, they talk about social deviance. So this is very important. Durkheim has been one of the most important persons who has laid down the base, the foundation for the sociological theories. And before I discuss few of the theories, we must understand that the sociological theories have been very relevant in explaining, crimes like juvenile delinquency. The impact of the sociological theories on the understanding of juvenile delinquency was such that it helped in laying down the very basic, convention for juvenile, prevention. The convention on juvenile prevention that has been laid down on the basis of the sociological theories that have explained juvenile delinquency. Juvenile delinquency, we talk about the sociological theories. The sociologists, they talk about juvenile delinquency as an act. Obviously, there are biological factors. We can say that there are biological changes in a particular age group because of which, there is higher tendency of committing crime. Okay, it was found by the sociologists that the crime rate is very high in a particular period, not only in a particular country, all over the world. So it was felt that juvenile delinquencies is age specific problem, and it is kind of I won't say that it is natural, but because of the changes that are taking place in the juveniles, they tend to be aged. So the law has to be very, very different about juvenile delinquency. I'm talking about the manner in which the sociological theories have had an impact upon, laying down the laws and policies. That is why today we have, when we talk about juvenile laws, there is lot of focus on prevention. Preventing, like in our Juvenile Justice Act, we talk about the category of children in need for care and protection. Why do we need this category? We need this category because we want to nip the problem in the bud. Before it starts, we need to stop it. So basically, lot of sociological theories have, explained, because I'm talking about juvenile delinquency. Again, in Nirbhaya case, the issue of
I know the humanity is the incomplete of society. This is the process of society maintaining stability. When to break down the situation, then humanity is developed.
Basically, what happens that society is, organized in a very pattern structure. There is a, the society is constituted of different groups, and these groups are arranged in a particular pattern, and all the patterns are interrelated to each other. What happens that due to certain reasons, there can be a disturbance in the system. When the disturbance occurs, the social structure is not able to function properly, and we call it a situation of social disorganization. Social disorganization occurs when the socialization process is weak. I think you understand what is socialization.
Before I have a small question. All the sociological theories you are talking about, any theory is nothing but an explanation of why and how it is. It's a causal link. Once you have a causal link, the purpose of the theory is one needs to explain. Other ones to predict, other ones to control. There's a sequence. Now put it in a reverse gear. Where do the sociological theories stand? Basically, it was Merton and Durkheim, after that went to very large number of political sets of theories. All of them try to label, categorize and label. End up, they think it's an expected scheme. Okay. Now let us say society is not able to function, therefore there is deviance. When do we say society is not functioning properly? When there is deviance. Is deviance a cause or deviance effect? So So, this causal link and causal possession, none of the sociological theories can be explained. We can only call this kind and this kind and this kind. The causal possession, the cause itself is diagnosis of the effect, is a diagnosis of the problem. But can you reverse it? You can.
Basically, see the theory, obviously we can say the sociological theories are talking more about the cause, and they say that the cause lies in the society. Okay, somewhere we can say it lies in the social structure, or it lies in the defective learning process. We can say when the learning process is not proper, then crime takes place. But I think lot of theories that are developed, they are never complete. We keep on building one theory upon the other. For example, when we talk about Norton's theory, enemy theory, on that, we can say that strain theory, general strain theory has been. Yeah. Then we can talk about, subculture theory. We can say that these theories are only giving an explanation of crime. But then it is also important to understand that when we are talking about the preventive measures, the prevention is also very important. Then it is important to understand what is the basic cause of the deviance of crime in society. So that is where I feel, like I was talking about the social control, importance of social control in society. When the social control mechanism becomes weak, then rate of deviance or crime, starts increasing. The very good.
The sociological theories emerged at a time they were part of positive school thinking. And positive school thinking was interested in determinism. Unlike classical school, which was based on free will conceptualization, it is the moral, everyone is a free moral agent and he must pay for the crime. If there is a consent in the society, he has broken again by breaking the law, he has gone against the consensus of the society. So, for the classicalists, it was non-problematic. For the positivists, who talked of determinism, so biological determinism is all right. Now when they came to sociological determinism was taking the causes of crime away from the criminal into the society. When you take it into the society, you are blaming the society for the ills or behavioral aberrations of the individual. And when you are blaming, that's why under the impact of sociological determinism, there were studies which said that to open a school is to stop crime. To create reformatories is to stop crime. Famous 1967 American Crime Prevention Society report was full of this. So therefore they were talking that you have to change the outer structure. But that situation, changing the outer structure, the externalities of crime, because of which the crime is committed, because of which the individual is compelled, determined to commit crime. ये करेगा ही करेगा. Chicago school, individuals belonging to a sort of location will commit. Crowded slums में रहते हैं, वो तो crime करेंगे ही करेंगे. They are criminogenic areas. इसीलिए जो बाहर रहते हैं, those who stay outside in non-criminogenic areas, वो crime नहीं करेंगे. That is the problem. It is because of the positivism, sociological, then psychological determinism. Again, turn the focus of causes, locating them into the individual again. So psychological determinism, which is the personality failure, it is individual total dysfunction, and not the society. So they have been throwing the ball from this side to that side. They are all part of determinism. Sociological determinism, biological determinism, psychological determinism, even economic determinism. But that's why radical criminology has to come and say, this man Karl Marx, 78 page, he has written and floored Proudhon. And in his
Philosophy, poverty
introduction to that book, he wrote, I thought Proudhon knew something of economics, then some people told me he knew something of philosophy. Now I realize he knew nothing, neither economics nor philosophy. Now to write this way about Proudhon, Proudhon was a giant. Who is this man? This man Karl Marx. He wrote poverty of philosophy.
78 pages, but exactly same story, same principles. Here, persons try to do, look, I went to the Chicago Sun. These are their values, these are their points, this is the means. So we put those products down, right? Or Karl Marx said, yeah, that's right. But you won't understand it wrong. That's what Karl Marx said. So,
I think
Yes, you want to say something? Yeah. Let's listen.
According to sociological point of view, I want to ask here, how much the correlation between upbringing of child and criminality?
open family is one big reason.
See, there are a lot of studies which have been done in the US specifically, where we can say that these days, the rate of divorce is increasing. Because of which, yeah, there is a increase in the broken families. Or we can talk about the role of immoral families. So, whenever the number of broken families and immoral families increases, there is a study which says that the rate of crime and juvenile delinquency also.
Actually, ma'am, what we are doing in this area? I mean, in sociological aspect, what we are doing?
maybe your question begs
You
one more
are-
question. Let me
Well, all of us have to answer this. We can't put anybody into.
No, but that question is very interesting. You said what is the correlation between two variables? What are they?
One is upbringing of child and criminality.
Okay.
Right.
Now you want to know the causal relationship.
Right.
Very good. For a causal analysis, there have to three basic conditions. One is there must be a very high positive correlation or even negative correlation.
Right.
Very high correlation. Second thing is there must be a time sequence, which comes first, which comes next. Cause comes first, which comes next. Third thing must be, to introduce a third variable, the original relation should not change. Now you introduce any variable, the situation changes. So therefore there is no causal relationship. It's only
But
correlation.
most of the parents are uneducated. Then in that case, what we should do?
The relation changes.
Asking very differently. You initially asked causal relation.
Right.
Please use this terminology very carefully. In social sciences, including sociology, of course, to some extent in psychology, we can have very strict research design where we can talk about cause and effect relationships. Unfortunately, in sociology and social anthropology, this strict construction laboratory kind of setting is not possible because you cannot control the extraneous variable.
Third variable.
Third variable. So statistically it may not be possible, but macro studies that we were discussing, that broadly we can infer, we can do some inductive and deductive reasoning and come out with a broad conclusion that upbringing or broken family, like spate of study in juvenile delinquency have been showing that family is a key factor in perpetuating delinquency, causing delinquency. But if you ask, like laboratory type of response, what Mr. Jamdar tends to indicate, that is difficult. For that you have to control lot many things, and probably lot of studies we have seen the cohort studies, you know, and the longitudinal studies. Now, longitudinal studies are studies in cohort. They have been done in US initially, groups and groups. They have done long back. But it is very difficult. But it's not impossible either.
So one further clarification on this. What you did is you took two variables. You take half a dozen variables, put all of them together against the outcome of the behavior. Your deviance becomes a dependent variable. Put half a dozen conditions like education, economic status, whatnot, and all that. Correlate them to what you call in the methodology multiple regression. Then you get the specific correlational levels. There is significant or insignificant different story. Then you know, multiplied, square into multiplied, then you get a percentage. There you can say what is a correlation means 60%, 70%. 80% is a very high one. If you can get that 80% correlation. So you get correlation studies and correlation, but not causation. That's what I'm trying to say.
Causation is, has to be seen very carefully. Yes, you have something.
Thank you. Ma'am, we have discussed regarding the socialization in this criminological perspective. a person who has abided the rules and regulations for the long time, but out of an opportunity he commits a crime. So under the sociological context, how will that be persuaded, or how that will be laid down?
See, till a certain point of time, the individuals are influenced by the family. After they move out to the society, they have their own framework and all. They have other systems of learning. Okay, so Sutherland's differential association theory is there. It says that an individual is surrounded by all kind of people and all kind of definitions, of crime. Some will have negative definition of crime, and those people will say, no, you should not commit.
And for crime, it needs cause. For differential association, if there is a cause, there is a crime. When there is a crime, there has to be a cause.
Rather, it is said crimes are committed when they are easy to commit.
No. Differential association theory, it is short in Shankaracharya's wording. Satsangate nissangatva. Nissangate nirmohatva. Nirmohate jivan mukti. In differential association, it is the opposite of it. Dussangate. You have dussanga and you learn. Crime is a learned phenomenon. It is learned by intimate personal groups. So 5 stages he talks of differential association: learning in intimate personal groups, and learning the total ways of doing it, making of norms, and all that. So just as you learn good behavior, you learn criminal behavior. जिसके चाचा ताऊ सब criminals हैं, वो कहेंगे कि गोली चलाओ, ये सब क्या है? Therefore, he has learned it from chacha ताऊ. Everybody is doing it. So I will also do it. How does he get desisted from it?
So one more thing.
Yeah,
When
you are
put
known by
something
the
in
friends
this
you
way,
keep. In other words, you are known by the friends you keep.
in India, we see that as there is a lot of, I was just saying that it was we want to keep a cultural value to ourselves. But then when we look into, maybe we see ourselves with America, we see ourselves with Europe, we get tempted. It's a kind of imitation kind of a thing which we keep on looking. We want to follow the trends of everywhere and we bring it to ourselves without knowing the advantages and the disadvantages of the trends which we are going to follow. But we want to keep our cultural aspect also with us. So when we change, and then I think there is a confusion which happens in the society which leads to lot of deviance in the society.
Yeah. See, criminal is a very strange subject. For every question, there is not one theory, but dozens of theories.
Depends which you
And
choose.
then-
I can explain this one. What question that theory you are asking? This is called the theory of opportunity by Lloyd Olin and Provard Olin and Provard. And they said delinquent opportunity theory is what tempts you. For example, propensity theory is available. Drugs are available everywhere. You said go to the counter there, you buy the drug, you take it. If it is not available anywhere at all, and you have to go to some remote place to get a drug, you think 10 times, right? It takes money, it takes time, it takes effort, it will when the person gets caught, then you are caught. On the other hand, if drugs are available everywhere, just in a BD shop here, you take it and leave. So availability factor is one thing. Or there are two things in a situation, to do or not to do. Both have equal valency. You tend to do that which attracts you. It will be negative. There's opportunity. The man who becomes corrupt because there's a corrupt opportunity. A man who doesn't become corrupt, he doesn't become corrupt even when there is opportunity, a real honest man. But a corrupt opportunity is there, he falls prey to it and goes corrupt. Is one thing. Jawaharlal Nehru on the floor of the parliament, when great debate was going on in the late 50s about Pratap Singh Kairal's corruption in the social Punjab, everyone was shouting to the rooftop of the House of Parliament, saying that so much corruption. Jawaharlal Nehru got worried and he came and said, shouting from the rooftops that everyone everywhere is corrupt, it creates an environment of corruption. So even those who are not corrupt also will go corrupt. Okay, this is it. But that's a different story. that's impact to the public opinion and individual behavior. Now coming back to this opportunity and temptation, opportunity is one of the factors which can definitely corrupt you.
And we have a session on that. I think
I
you
think
again 5
her
minutes.
question was on how to save the culture, best things of the culture, and then borrow from the Western world good things. Now on that, almost a decision has been taken by the Constituent Assembly debate by giving to the society a constitution. Constitution is the blueprint around which all cultural values have been incorporated into it, and nothing that remains outside. They can be co-opted, but Constitution, then human rights, instruments, conventions that we have signed, and to talk of cultural things outside. Say for instance the Article 44 of the they have sought of uniform civil code. Now they have thought in a very long range. It's a blueprint not for immediate 1950, but for 2050 also. It is a blueprint. Till Constitution is changed, now we'll have a society where ultimately uniform civil code is possible, where rights are guaranteed to everyone. Now question is, why do you need culture then? Culture is to limit the rights. We don't want that culture. Right? Culture is for rationing the people's individuality, de-recognizing individuals. We don't want that culture because Constitution that doesn't permit it. If you read transgender judgment of Justice Sikri and Justice Radhakrishnan, how much they have labored. They have created a third, male, female and transgender. World over people are praising, they are saying that this was never in our minds, but the UN also recognized it, that this has been a path-breaking way. So, इस तरह से, and it has come from the Constitution. Article 21 से आया, it has come from the Constitution. So, Constitution is a kind of wealth, a gold mine. You dig into it and you get it. But our society cannot go independently of culture. We had a lot of debate with even Professor Menon. He said if the slaves are happy and the slave master in villages in Kerala, what is that? I said this is unconstitutional. Therefore it has to go. You cannot justify slavery. You cannot justify sati today. You cannot justify child marriage. You cannot justify baby. Many people are saying if women are married at the age of 11, the sexual crime problem will not be there. Many people are saying. But do we go back to it? Women are constitutional entities.
As a culture,
You cannot
No,
do it.
let's have some closing remarks and then we can finally
I think
invite
because this is part of your remarks, because this is home from your presentation.
You can give now the final remark, you have 5 minutes. Just take 8 minutes, just let her and then finally the floor is open.
Basically, yeah, a lot of questions came, and what I feel we can say that the sociological theories that have been laid down may not be very scientific. They may not give us, very clear conclusions about the relationships of different parts. But it is important to understand that the criminal activities, the deviant acts, have to be seen in the context of a larger society. Because crime and deviance is a part of society and it is related to the control mechanism. So the society and the individual, in sociology we will say that the society is above the individual. The individual, even though the individual makes the society, still the society overpasses the individual. So the individual has to function in consonation, in conformity with the rules that have been laid on us. That is very important. If that does not happen, then crime and deviance will keep on increasing and social disorganization will occur. There are a lot of theories which have been laid down again. And when we do an empirical study, then what we do is we take a context and we try to see which theory will apply the best in a particular context, and we try to apply. And actually what happens is when we study a practical problem in reality, no theory may fit it. You may have to have a concoction of different theories and use the sociological methods to arrive at your own conclusions. Maybe we come up with our own theory. This is very important. So the sociological theories are very important, and like in US and all also, they have made the people realize that ultimately, because the causes lie in the society, to a large extent, there can be a lot of focus upon prevention of it. So there are a lot of policies that have been developed on prevention of it. So ultimately, I will say that the sociological theories are very relevant. There are so many theories, which give different kind of explanation. So you can pick up. There are a lot of theories.
And one more thing, actually, autobiography of Dilip Kumar has just come. The title is very good, Substance and Shadow. So sometimes we discuss substance, sometimes we discuss shadow. So at one point in that biography, Raj Kapoor was directing one of the actors. So he was unable to tell how to do. So इसमें थोड़ा सा यूसुफ डाल दो, तो Dilip Kumar, Yusuf. So he couldn't explain how to do. थोड़ा सा इसमें यूसुफ चाहिए मुझे. I need some Yusuf. So we have to symbolize certain things. And similarly, when I am coming to that we are trying to seek absolutism. Absolutism has no place in social science. No research. No research can be so convincing or so 100% true in terms of cause and effect or impact. They are at best explanatory to a situation, in a controlled situation. Yes, you can increase the reliability and validity of your findings by way of applying a better research methodology. Like for instance, in social psychology, the people have done remarkable work on the scene. When Sutherland kind of theories were introduced on the count of reliability, social learning of violence kind of theory in social psychology were better accepted and recognized. Reason being, the methodology adopted in psychology is far more rigorous because they use a standardized tests. And they have, but still, I always say, they do not have 100%. They are true to the context. The context in which a particular test has been generalized, the findings would be relevant to that context. No theorization you cannot universalize the finding of any sort. No study. Expecting a study to be of that sort is a realistic and very far-fetched kind of thing. And I find in sociology two broad divisions at play. This is just like that all theories are in two groups. One is social process, which communication, learning, labeling, all those things, where some interaction. Others are on social structure. Alright? So broadly, two schools of it depends, and she is rightly pointing out, and professor is also. If a phenomena is there, you are confronted with a criminal phenomena, deviance phenomena, you have to choose that which theory can explain this particular occurrence in a given point of time and to what extent. Sometimes it may not well be explained by a particular set of theory. You may have to choose other, But I think a lot of research base is already available. A lot of theories have been put to test. What are even Sutherland theories? Donald Glaser, in fact, Glaser theory of social identification. Marx's theory of delinquency drift. All these theories were in response to what Sutherland has done initially, and he has brought a perspective that criminal behavior can be learned. Sutherland, the value doesn't lie in Sutherland saying criminal behavior is learned. When Sutherland said that, what was that period? That period was when it was said that criminal was born. Criminal is born.
Lemert said.
Lemert said. So criminal is born is contrasted by criminal behavior is learned. So it has got a lot of value. Now sitting 21st century having so much of knowledge, we are rejecting because you have now a lot of exposure to science, technology, and our understanding has grown multifold. Therefore, we are in a better position to produce a critique of what has been said. But as a point of reference, reference as a frame of reference to understand criminality or lenience in a context is very important. Because removing the context, I personally think you cannot understand. You have to have. You can have a state or regulatory context. You have a social context. You can have a cultural context. You can have a psychological context. But against a context, you can measure all these things. So to that extent, these and again, this whole school of thought relating to treatment, correction, and reform, it came from the sociological, understanding of criminal behavior. Because shifting focus from crime to criminal resulted into the individualized treatment of offender in the prison. So that was I personally think this is the contribution of theorization, individualist theorization. But that struggle is still happening because in capital punishment, the Supreme Court is also saying there are 4 models: crime-centric sentencing, criminal-centric sentencing, society-centric sentencing, and judge-centric sentencing. So
Last one is more important.
last one is more important. No, this is another model, judge, because it is. But even the society-centric can be very difficult. Because how you will. And one judgment we have given, this Goswami judgment from the Delhi High Court. In that judgment, Justice Murthy is saying, if potential to reform becomes one of the mitigating factors to be evaluated by the judge, how the judge would evaluate that factor? If a matter comes before a judge where he has to decide whether this offender has a potential to reform or not, how a judge would come to? I am asking you law background, because sentencing, if he has to take a decision to commute the sentence for want of potential to reform, but since he has stated this factor, some pieces should be shown in this case also. So he said there should be a formula and mechanism. The entire judgment is explaining that mechanism, and there he is talking the role of sociologist, criminologist, to be there in a group where they will evaluate for a while that what are the important indicators of personality change which has happened, quantitatively, scientifically, objectively. Then the judge would be in a position to take decision with regard to that behavior, that behavior. So, idea is we are trying to underscore various perspectives. So this is one perspective we try to look at. Idea was not to give you the entire index of theorization. Idea was to provoke you to think sociologically on these issues. So any other remark or observation, then we are trying to close it, right? Because this has been a long day. I'll take
one example is Provoke movie is the best example.
Provoke. Yeah, Provoke.
The Provoke is the best example to answer your question of psychological helps.
Yes. Yeah. Have you seen that Aishwarya Rai? We have seen this. I think some discussion was also organized at some place showing that movie anyway. So it is my present duty to offer assistance to the parents, especially to Dr. G. All the way to agree to deliver a wonderful education. Also to my great knowledge and thanks all for a long day for your participation. I'm happy that you are now taking part and participating and responding. So have a good time today evening and enjoy your time today and come ready for tomorrow's we have again breakfast discussion. Please come on time. Yeah. The university also.
I did my MSc under
Exactly.
her.
So I
did
also
my MSc under her.
I have some idea that she has been an active visitor to the National Institute of Technology and Forensic Science, and she keep going still to so many programs in NICFS, especially those dealing with the psychological aspects of criminal behavior. And since I also go very often to NICFS, and I came to know that there is a person who is very senior and take a lot of interest in examining the psychological correlates to criminal behavior. Then, when we decided to hold this program here, this is basically a group of teachers in criminology, in law, in social work. They are here to undergo a brief I won't say orientation program, but it's a capacity building program, a very focused program where we are not actually delivering the lecture, we are rather, trying to convey that if the topic is to be delivered, what could be the approach and what could be the key issues and how they could be handled and presented to achieve maximum effectiveness. So with this objective, this program is being organized, and one of the components is psychological explanation to criminal behavior. So I'm very happy and I extend hearty welcome on behalf of the National Law University Delhi team. And also we have Dr. Subhra Sanyal. I have the pleasure of knowing her since I don't know how many years since I have been in touch with her, and many of you must have seen her working in National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science, and she has retired from NICFS. Which year?
I died in 2007.
2007, and still what is important is I noticed she is still very active to her some very interesting research projects. She is psychologist by training, and she has then developed into many areas like mental literacy, technology, being in the ICFS, dealing with criminal justice personnel, imparting training to thousands of professionals there, and of course later on catering to those PC programs in criminology and forensic science. So I thought we'll have some good time in this session. And when this session we are a little late because of course you are coming first time. So this session is will end at 10:30. We have another 10 minutes. Just to so I leave it to you and the way you want to conduct, and we listen to you, and you want to engage the people. It's up to you. The floor
In
is
fact,
thank you very much.
since all of you are professional working and also you are going to be part of the training program where you are going to learn what kind of methodology you have to use to teach and so on, I would prefer that we, after slight introduction about the psychological theories which are related to criminology and criminal behavior, I think let us have more of an interactive session so that you can ask me questions so that I could answer, because actually I had no idea what exactly this program was all about, but I knew it was capacity building and development program, but I was not very sure what kind of people will be there. Now I find my young friend is here and so many others who are seniors in this field are here. So I think we will have an interaction, but let me start with the psychological aspects of criminal behavior. In fact, you all know in one way or the other, because psychology and criminology are highly related to each other. There are many theories which are related to sociological theories, and there are many psychological theories, and there are many other theories which are learning theories which are part of which try to explain criminal behavior. When we look at the theoretical orientation of this whole program, I find that one important theory which we are concerned with, which was given first theory of criminology by psychologists was by Freud. I think all of you have heard about Sigmund Freud. He was the one who talked about three important components of personality. And he said that instinctively we all have certain desires, certain needs, and certain very unpleasant thoughts which are all within us, which try to express itself in a number of ways. And but then these require immediate gratification. I used to always give a very interesting example to my students when I used to discuss this particular theory, particularly the criminal behavior aspect of it. Yeah, but a person was walking through a street which is full of gold and silver and such other jewelry shops. And as he was walking, on the one hand he felt, why not I go just inside somewhere and get all the gold ornament and all the diamonds and come away. then something within him tells him, how dare you talk like this? This is not the right thing to do. This is morally wrong, ethically wrong. And you may end up in a jail. You should not do this. You should not even have such thoughts. That is the superego part of it, which is telling the id part of it, which wanted to grab all this reality. Then comes the ego part, which says, no, your needs can be satisfied in course of time. You earn and take and earn a lot of wealth, after which you can go to the shop and purchase what you want to. Now, this is the ego part of it. Now, Freud, what he did was, all the three put together, he said, if the superego or the moral values are very low in a person, it cannot actually control the id part of it, where I want to go steal and take away what I want to. Now, this is the part which is criminally oriented part. And so he said, if your ego and superego are not strong enough, then you end up as a criminal. So according to Freud's theory, the id being strong and is unable to be controlled by the ego part of it, and also the moral values being very low, the person tends to become a criminal. He didn't say that everyone will develop into a criminal, but he said that that is what it is. Then we had another important psychological group which had another interesting theory, which they said that this is based on learning theory, as we said. Now, learning theory said every behavior is learned and therefore it can be unlearned. So change your environment, change the place where the person is, and bring about a positive kind of an environment where such behavior cannot at all express itself, then you can, you will be morally right kind of person. Now this kind of a theory, learning theory said, even a criminal behavior is learned by people. As what as a child is getting grown up in a family, if the father and mother or the neighborhood or others, or of that type, and you find that the criminal behavior is being reinforced, rewarded in some way or the other, is able to see it, then he also develops those behaviors. So another theory, psychological theory, which is a learning theory, which kind of explains the criminal behavior was, it is all learned behavior. Then we have another interesting theory in psychology is what we call as a personality disorder. Some people, all of you would have heard about mental health program, mentally disordered people. Personality disorder is one part of abnormal psychology. Now, according to this theory, personality disorder theory, they said every person is born with certain personality disposition, and so he developed this, criminal personality more in terms of if given an opportunity and the environment provides him that opportunity, then he may, because he has that predisposition, he developed that kind of a criminal behavior. So this was another kind of theory which one group of psychologists put forward. Then in the 1990s, psychological research was focused on early childhood and the experiences that the child undergoes during that period. And all this, according to them, if there is a criminally oriented environment, the child tends to lead to criminal behavior, tends to lead to criminal life. Now, according to them, these kinds of behaviors are all supposed to be due to negative childhood experiences. Supposing a child is brought about in the family, I think Dr. Sanyal will be able to tell more about it because she is dealing with adolescent children with a lot of problem behavior. Now this kind of children, they are not born criminal, but they do have, we say that it is genetic. It is not genetic. There is a genetic predisposition to develop criminal behavior. And so, if the environment is suitable to that criminal behavior to be developed, then the person also develops the same kind of behavior. So, genetic influences plus what you have experienced in your childhood, plus the environment in which you are being brought up, all this put together leads to criminal behavior. Another interesting theory that was what we call as cognitive development theory. Now, according to this theory, it says that offenders or criminals have failed to develop their moral judgment capacity beyond the pre-conventional level. You know, this theory was actually put forward by Piaget. He talked about different levels, and he said many of these behaviors at the cognitive level, when the child is about 3.5 years old, when he faces an environment where the childhood is brought about in such a way that the parents are not able to inculcate the moral values in the child, his cognitive development gets affected and gets completely stopped. As a result, he may develop into a criminal in the course of time. Then there were, I think many of you would have heard about Ising. He was another great person, a psychologist, who talked about trait theory of personality. And he put forward a number of tests to measure the traits in the individual. He talked about 3 types of personality. One, he said, is extrovert, another he said introverted, and third he said it is a psychopathic personality. Now, he said, if you come across people of this type, the person who has the psychopathic trait is the one who has more chances of developing the criminal behavior. And so he developed a number of tests, psychopathic tests and so many other tests to measure such personality in the individual. And he was one person who talked about the contemporary trait theory and said there is no single physical or biological attribute that can explain all criminal behavior. But there are certain behaviors which come about as a result of a combination of hereditary factors, environmental factors, childhood experience factors, and the trait, the predisposition that a person has. Then we have another important set of characteristics which we call as psychopathic personality persons. Most of the people who are in jail, having committed murders, committed homicide, committed burglary, committed all kinds of violations against the society, these people tend to have, according to these theories, they tend to have what we call as criminal tendencies, which are inherited in a particular way. But inheritance, you don't get the criminal tendency later. But what you get is, as we told you earlier also, predisposition to this. And these are people who develop certain neurological traits. And these neurological traits take them to, very often, to criminal behavior which is so easily available to them to pass on, to take over. So although there are very many different theories that are available in psychological perspective, all these theories share one common belief, and that is criminal behavior is in many aspects of society. Now we are talking about Taliban, we are talking about terrorism, we are talking about Afghanistan, we are talking about many shootings that take place in USA, children go and shoot so many people. Many kinds of behaviors are all around the world, in all societies. But the problem is, the criminal behavior is not only in every aspect of the society, but what all of you have to do is to address this aspect and see how you, in your position, can deal with this aspect by knowing some of the psychological explanations that help to understand the criminal behavior. Supposing you do that, you will be perhaps in a position to take that aspect also into consideration in addition to the law, in addition to the legal aspect, in addition to the sociological aspect. All this put together, you will be in a position to deal with that problem in a more effective, in a more understandable way. And every individual, if you put them in a jail, doesn't mean that he will become alright, as you all would have understood that is correct. But can we do some kind of a reform, some kind of a psychological counseling, some kind of a psychological approach to this individual, which can help him become different person than what he was in. We have many stories, many actual, evidences that are made in the research which show people who are in jail can also be treated through art therapy and so many other psychological therapies. And they have become completely all right. And many researchers have shown they are absolutely like any other normal person living in a community, contributing to the society in his way. So this is what I want to tell you about, but I would like to leave it to you people to discuss with me and tell me what you want. If you want to ask me any questions, I will let us.
Have the discussion together.
First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me here. And criminology is very close to my heart because when I started the criminology in ICFS, my only sole aim was that let it widen and let it become so much useful and regular and job-oriented that people come and take it. But sorry to say, it is still, struggling. Go ahead. But let me say that you are teachers and you can initiate and motivate your students to take up criminology like I did through counseling. Criminology, once upon a time we were taught it was said to be an offspring of all social sciences. But today it has become a very important entity because with the spate of crimes of all types in the country or anywhere in the world, people are trying to look into the individual. And this individual is not a person who is coming out of the womb. This individual is one who is coming from a basic environment, who is coming with a maybe faulty, defective background, who is coming with some mindset, who is coming with some attitude, who is different from others. We will not say these are normal. Criminals are not abnormal, but they are also not abiding by the social norms, and so we call them abnormal people. Now, since Dr. Veeraraghavan has gone into all the theories, I have no intention to do that. But what I want to tell you as teachers, me also has been a teacher of criminology, that I moved from psychology to criminal psychology having no idea of what criminal psychology is once upon a time in 1974. But that enthused me when I used to go into the jails and I used to see the people. I used to go into the condemned cells and I used to talk to the people. Then I started feeling that this psychology can be very important to understand the criminal in the context. And that, fortunately, my job was that I visited all the jails in the country. And even after retirement, as Dr. Bajpayee said, I got a Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. And I had told Dr. Karan Singh that if I can, I'll establish a rehabilitation model in the country. Like Dr. Veeraraghavan said, that not necessarily that if you put a person in the jail, he is reformed. So, my intention is that if the person wants to get reformed, he is already reforming in the jail. Are we able to rehabilitate him when he is coming out into the mainstream? Why is he relapsing? What is there in the environment which is again fostering him to go back into the crowd? And I visited 9 to 10 states of the country alone. I used to sit in the morning in the midst of the prisoners and I used to listen to them. That opened up my psychology all the more. That, I moved away from theories, I went into the practical and I saw that what has happened, what compelled them to commit crime. The causes are varied. You cannot touch on one cause. Varied. And the personality is also different. We cannot say that it is genetic, or we cannot say it is always learned. It is sometimes, done on a prompt, on a spontaneous basis. Like I tell you that there was a case in Bhopal which I saw. A man said, I have murdered, I have admitted that I have murdered this man who came to rape my daughter in my presence. Now that is a spontaneous action. As Dr. Veeraraghavan said, that we have id, ego, super ego. The id is there dormant, okay, but it gets activated when there is any stimulant which brings it up to the surface, then the individual's rationality goes down, his impulse takes shape, and he commits the crime. I have seen that. And today I sit in the midst of adolescents. Every day, whether I feel comfortable or not, I journey from Indirapuram to Kingsway Camp. I sit with them, I listen to their sordid stories, and my objective is again to get as many as people out of that observation home and send them to the parents. Many times what happens? The boy is saying, मैं change हो रहा हूँ, पर क्या मेरे parents change हो रहे हैं? You know, what happens is, right at midnight I'm getting a phone from a mother saying, मेरा बेटा घर से निकल गया. I said, you must have said something. नहीं, मैंने कुछ नहीं बोला. फिर से सोचिए, 12-1 बजे की बात है रात को. कह रही हाँ वो बीड़ी पी रहा था. हमने कहा जब उसने हैबिट डाल लिया है, let him have one बीड़ी but get him in the house. I said your son will come back. सुबह फोन आता है, वही लड़का कहता है आंटी मैं वापस आ गया. Now, how am I to change the parents? You know what I'm trying? I'm doing my level best to talk to the parents one-to-one basis. And that's what's happening, that the parents then realizing their mistakes, children are not at fault if they are moving away from home. Massively, these children are migrant children, these children are coming from poverty-stricken homes, even from upper classes. Only thing we do not have upper classes children in our observation homes. But these children are all not bad. When they observe an alcoholic father, when they observe a marital discord, when they see that they have to move away from home for jobs and they get over in the company of peer group, they go into drugs. And then that starts the nexus of crime and drugs. Heavily I am watching this and I am trying my level best to help them to introspect their own self. That is where I am utilizing my psychology friends, and this even today until my death I will go on utilizing psychology into understanding the criminal behavior of an individual. What I noticed, let me share with you and then I will give it to Virendra Katpalia, that even when I go to CBI Academy for criminal, they call me for scientific interrogation techniques, that for filing of criminals, you have to go into their backgrounds, their age, the crimes they have committed, if they have any antecedent of criminal behavior, the environment when they come, the stress that they are undergoing, and the education and economic, all these conditions are put together. And then you provide and you will find that this individual is not a hardened criminal, he will not become a hardened criminal if an intervention program takes place at the right time. This man will go back, or this boy will go back as a normal individual. So I feel very happy with my psychology report that I am able to assess the criminal behavior, and my suggestion to you all as teachers, try your level best to introduce this psychology more and more into this criminal this thing. I have studied rapists also. I have studied the psyche of rapists, and that my paper has been accepted. And I have seen the morbid personality that they have, if they are a serial rapist, otherwise no. So you will become, a person with psychology will become very useful in the society if he or she can try to, understand the criminal, try to mitigate the criminal behavior, try to reform, if not rehabilitate the criminal behavior, and restore a person back into society. Even if you restore one person, you are doing a lot of this much I will say, and then I will give it. Yeah, please.
We'll take 10 minutes and we'll ask them to that's it.
Thank you, friends. First of all, I would like to thank this National Law University management. They have given me this opportunity. Friends, I am from this National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science, and I am from laboratory. Since last 34 years, my elder sister, Dr. Shubha Sandhya, and me. Both were crying and crying from this platform regarding this criminal psychology. I was more busy in forensic psychology because there is no watertight compartment between forensic psychology and criminal psychology, because I am doing this polygraph lab and biofeedback, this instrumentation. Since the last 9 batches, we taught this student of forensic science and criminology. I am teaching forensic psychology and simultaneously criminal psychology. A number of times syllabus was revised. Perhaps I was absent all the time. And whenever I was teaching, I was feeling irritated. What rubbish we are teaching. Sorry, whosoever is sitting, maybe with a part of the syllabus committee. Today I brought a white syllabus here. I wanted to share the syllabus with my experts fellow and this novice people. They are going to this capacity building program. So I have divided, I have gone through syllabus, this Harvard and another university syllabus from abroad and Indian syllabus, particularly Sagar University syllabus, our own syllabus, Mysore and many more. They were in Goa University. They are busy in this undergraduate programs. So what they have framed, that is important for us. So very first thing is, what I felt, all the time we are busy in basically 2 schools of thoughts. One is psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, perhaps we are obsessed with Sigmund Freud. And somebody without knowing Sigmund Freud, they are criticizing. He is talking more and more about sex. And they are not aware what is Sigmund Freud basic theory. And you see, in our syllabus at least, what I have gone through and I was teaching, they always Sigmund Freud, I am teaching Sigmund Freud, another teacher is coming, a guest faculty is again teaching Sigmund Freud. And the student get bored, he said, what is this? So there are many more, you see, this is psychoanalytical school of thought, and beside that there is a neo-analytical theories emerges. So I wanted to emphasize here, besides Sigmund Freud, we should also discuss about this Carl Jung, Adler, Anna Freud, neo-analytic, Erikson, Carney. They are all equally important for us, and we can explain this criminal behavior through their school of thoughts. And I have divided the syllabus into 8 units. I would like to give this syllabus to the experts also, they can make their own comments. The very first unit is explaining about the meaning and purpose and scope of criminal psychology. I am teaching this scope of criminal psychology. Sometimes I am getting this late. You please teach this scope of criminal psychology. It is a very sensitive subject. Students should know what is the scope of criminal psychology and how it is related with this forensic psychology. Again, is the crime pattern and changing nature of crime in modern India. In modern India, the pattern of crime is changing. Earlier, you see dacoity, burglary. The students of criminology, they were studying. Now, you see cyber crime has taken place instead of this type of traditional crime. How the crime pattern is changing in due course of time, and what are the psychological forces behind it that we should study. And another thing is victimization and dark figure. I was working on this NCRB statistics, crime in India. What's my observation? in crime in India, even not more than 20% or 25% sometimes, like sex offences, were reported. So what is the remedy? There are remedies that we should discuss with the students how to cover. Then again you see media and attitude towards crime is a more important thing. What is the attitude of the people towards crime? How do they perceive? And moreover, they are having fear towards the crime. Fear of crime, we were working on a project. Unfortunately, we could not complete it. Still, I am having this data with me, more than 400 Delhi residents. They are having fear in a different age group, sex group, socio-economic status, and different personality patterns. It is very important to discuss with the students, I think. And the police image is again an area. I am having more than 10, 15 papers, 10, 11 papers in this area, image of police. So these are some general things I have included in this unit 1. And unit 2, as I told you, is a psychoanalytic and neuroanalytic theory we should discuss. And another thing, as Dr. Veera Raghavan, Professor Veera Raghavan has already discussed, is a behaviorist approach to the crime. So we should know about the meaning and definition and concept of learning. What is learning and what is learning behavior? And different school of thoughts are there, different theories are there. For example, classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning, and Skinner operant conditioning is a very, very important thing. What we are using in clinical setup. One thing, let me tell you, I am a man from laboratory. Beside this laboratory, I am also running a clinic, and we are receiving number of cases, children and sometimes housewives, senior citizens, married couples. So I am dealing this type of cases also. So operant conditioning is a very important thing. Social learning, Bandura model, expectancy theory, invitational aspect of social learning is equally important that we should discuss in class. And one thing more I would like to emphasize, that these are all concepts what we are discussing. Our program should be more inclined towards the skill-based program. That's my personal opinion. And I have categorized all these things, how we can make it skill-based program. Frustration-induced criminality is again a very popular concept which we should discuss. Professor Veera Raghavan and Dr. Sanyal, they have already discussed about personality theories, different personality theories, for example, trait and type theories. Eisen theory is a very good theory, and we are practicing in our laboratory. My students, telling them, rather I am teaching them, they are doing practical only, how to calculate the personality of a person. Eisen theory of personality, Dr. Sanyal and me perhaps huge data, I don't know how much, even in 10,000, more than 10,000 profile we have done on different age group, sex, socioeconomic strata, police officers, non-police officers, judicial officers even, we have gone through. Psychopaths and psychopathic personality is of interest area. As Professor Veera Raghavan told about this psychopathic personality, perhaps Western people, they feel psychopathy is not curable. That's my experience in my clinical setup. Psychopathic, I am hopeful. We have done I have dealt number of patients, you can say, particularly children of conduct disorder, antisocial personality, psychopathic personality, primary psychopathic personality, and we could get very good results. So 2-3 things. Yes. No, I will not. One thing I would like to emphasize, because number of things are there which I wanted to discuss. There are 2 things.
You will have a
Yes, broad heading. I wanted to tell one thing. There should be specialization in criminal psychology in master level, at least in master level. One type of, course we can develop for this behavior modification program. We are discussing about all this theory. These are simply concepts. But how to practice this concept is a more important thing. What we are doing in our clinic, how to use this operant conditioning, how to use this classical conditioning, how to use this social learning in different setup. That practice is required. For this, we should develop a specialized program for behavior modification and crime prevention. And another type of program I personally feel is related to forensic psychology, that is investigation of crime. Where I have categorized, this narco-analysis, brain fingerprinting, polygraph, as I am an expert in this area, and there are many more techniques. For example, forensic hypnosis, offender profiling. This is misperceived by some of the experts what is offender profiling. Because since the last 6-7 years, I was teaching this offender profiling, and we have developed a studio for this. In we are having a photography lab. There we are having some dummy, rape scene, this your murder scene. Children, they are creating there, and how to understand, the personality of a person or the antecedent of a person, the person who could have committed this crime through crime scene only, modus operandi. So these are the criminal profiling is not that is a different issue. Yes. So friends, this type of syllabus, I personally feel we should have practical oriented, skill-based program, and these all ingredients we should put in our syllabus. I would like to speak to the experts this.
I think to summarize what has happened is, one, we knew something about psychological theory, explaining criminal behavior. Dr. Singhal spoke about how to treat the individual and more than an individual, his family. And Dr. Kapalia talked about the syllabus and what are the important aspects to be included in that. He talked about more skill-based program that we should have. And as far as offender profiling is concerned, a lot of work has been done abroad. But in India, we are still, in the infancy stage as far as offender profiling is concerned, because it requires a lot of research, a lot of work, practical experience, and then we must have the psychologists will have access to many kinds of results and then try to put it out. Now, with these few words, I would now like the audience to ask us any question. You can address it to any one of the three of us.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Ma'am, I would like to ask a specific question with respect to the sexual offenders. You have mentioned that it can be treated or intervention programs can be introduced for the sexual offenders, for example, the rapists or the molesters. Which technique would be the better one, you feel? Cognitive behavioral therapy or any other therapy which can be introduced in our criminal justice system? Because as of now, there is no treatment intervention program for sexual offenders specifically.
See, about this, there is no one technique in this. A sexual offender, we have had this through, as Dr. Katpalia said, through social learning and the environment from which he has come. But cognitive behavior therapy to an extent will help. Art therapy helps a great deal in sexual offenders. And thirdly, certain amount of what you can call as punishment to this kind of thing, where the person feels that this kind of a work is very unpleasant to me, I should not indulge in it. That kind of aspect should be inculcated into that person. Through counseling, which Dr. Sanya will be doing, I think she should be able to answer this question better. But all the three put together has to be taken up and treated. And remember, sexual offender or homicidal person, all these people will not be cured overnight. It takes years, sometimes 2 years, 3 years. And maybe at the end of it you may find some improvement. Again they will go back to the same kind of situation. So the relapse rate is also very high. But again it depends upon the kind of counseling that you do, the kind of environment that you create, as Dr. Sanya said, how you make the family respond to him, make them also be part of your therapeutic community. All these are important.
You see, when we talk about sexual offenders, again you have to keep in mind, are they ones who are occasional or casual, or they are ones who are habitual? Now, when I handle, these casuals and all, and I try to start speaking to them not once, twice, on a continuum basis, then I come across many other intermediary factors that are there. Maybe, I'm talking of an adolescent, giving you an example without naming the boy. He must have noticed in the family, this type of hostility going on, where the mother is continuously beaten up by the father, where he has realized that, the woman or the girl, they have no value, where he feels, he is in contact with peer group, and they take it as a thrill, as not an experiment, as a thrill, as a sensation. But since adolescent age is a formative personality, immediately if you start talking to the boy, and I have felt that guilt, the sense of guilt, is the baseline of reform. If continuously you make the fellow realize, and then he understand that he has committed a mistake, he is made to introspect, he is made to feel that if you have a sister at home, if somebody rapes your sister, how do you feel? This type of very pertinent questions are being asked on a continuum basis. And I notice that this boy starts repeating, and then I can feel that this boy will not repeat crime if he gets restored in a proper, engaged in a proper, holistic, constructive.
There are many. Let us take all questions.
I think you had raised your hand.
First you take all questions one by one, then please.
All the questions will
All
get.
the questions. Starting
Yeah,
from
go ahead.
Yes. You can go to questions.
My question is to Dr. Sanya. When you talk about guilt being the baseline of reform, what about offenders who don't think that they're committing anything wrong, who don't reject it? For example, marital rape is not an offense in India. What about the husbands who are continuously raping their wives? And there's a lot of human crime lately about this issue. Have you had the opportunity to work with such people?
No, not with the husbands.
How do you reform that?
Yes. We will protect the question. Yes.
Yeah.
What impact does Freudian theory have on the criminal justice system today?
Sorry?
What have
Use your mic. Use your mic.
what impact does Freudian theory have on criminal justice system today?
The relevance of Freud.
Have on criminal
And
justice.
anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about the sexual offenders, they're not habitual sexual offenders, they're the casual sexual offenders. So, do you recommend any change in law? Do the law should have a soft corner for non-habitual sexual offenders?
So attitudinal change, you want to see whether it can be brought about through law.
Yeah, please.
And how do you see this Nirbhaya case?
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Nirbhaya case because
I'll talk about that because I have
punishment.
sure, yeah, I will.
Another question.
Yeah, my question is to Dr. Sanya. I have been working for reintegration of juveniles in convicted now. And it's quite interesting to know that you have been observing criminals in jails, children in observation homes and all that. And it's quite rightly you said that children have to be counseled in a continuum
regular basis. But I was wondering, ma'am, in a society where the population is so high, observation homes are crowded with children, how do you manage it practically? Like you've been working for such a long time. Have you seen any model existing there wherein a child has been reintegrated? And if you have seen it, then what are the things, components of that model that you think is an ideal one? You can call it an ideal one. So the two questions are, one is the practicality, and the second thing, if any model is existing, what are the components of that model?
Yes, any other? The psychological theory is about the individual only. In case of riot or gang rape, it's more than one person is involved in the murder. So how it is considered the psychological theory applied more than one person? Group.
And the psychological explanation, psychological explanation, and psychoanalysis explanation, different things of crime or criminality. But I know one scientific and how to do scientific analysis to explore the crime and criminality.
Anybody else? Yes.
So the question is more you discussed, you outline about the syllabus which you prepared. So you're discussing about you want to make impact in the skill-based approach. So traditionally in most schools, we are getting more into this theoretical platform. So if you want to deepen that theoretical platform and to move towards the skill-based approach, what are the ideas in your mind?
Yeah, my question is ma'am, as you have worked with the mind.
I know that's what I'm sure that others can also.
Yeah, ma'am, as you have worked with contemporary prisoners and you have done some researches with prisoners.
Adults and young. I've done.
Yeah, I mean, my question is like, is there any psychological explanation which gives a correct theoretical explanation for the people, those who commit offences due to sudden provocation? For example, you say many of our lifers, murderers, and you say around among the convict prisoners, if it is around 40%, and among the 40% of convict prisoners, there are around 20 to 25% of our convict prisoners, lifers constitute 20 to 25%, and many of them are first-time offenders, and due to sudden provocation they commit the offence. And you give him another 1 crore and ask him to commit one more murder, he will not.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any psychological theory which explains the offenders who commit due to sudden provocation?
Yeah, please.
Ma'am, how can we change the psychology of persons showing nature of cannibalism? For example, in Nithari killing case. So, is there any way out for that?
Well, I think any other question? Yeah.
Is there any psychological explanation for the person who are indulging in corporates and economic offenses?
Yeah, white collar crimes.
Corporate and economic offenses. Okay, any other thing? Yeah.
Ma'am,
The mic and ask.
yeah. Ma'am, criminal profiling doesn't exist much in India. So if it has to be introduced in Indian setting, what kind of methodology can be used? Whether it's an investigative methodology or a crime scene analysis methodology?
Yes, madam.
I
want to know from you that Sigmund Freud says that personality changes from the super ego, and id. What is it which makes a man to change from the super ego to the ego that id? Is Sigmund Freud in a position to explain it? What makes him to change from one position to another position? And further, I'm not sharing information with all of you, but only after this discussion. If I leave you in the chat.
Not everybody should be now. Who are left? Who have not asked?
Ma'am, during my research and presence, I noticed an incident in which one man, he had committed a murder way back in 81. He was there in prison for 4 years. Then he was released on parole. So what he did was he absconded. And he was away from around for 18 to 20 years. So during the period, what he did was he moved away from the place. He settled in another place. He got married to one of his friend's sister. He has 2 children. Then he got them married. And after that he realized, oh, now my duties are over. So he came back to the prison. And
That's an extraordinary example.
and now he is there in prison for the past 14 years.
I think they should give release.
Yes, yes. So how do you explain this problem?
Any other question? Yes.
My question is for Subha ma'am. Ma'am, when you conduct the research on the psychology of the child offenders, do you find any instances when they say that media has influenced them to do some crime?
Obviously.
Okay, I think I will start with one or two questions which are addressed to me. Remaining I will request Dr. Katpalia and Dr. Sanyal to answer. Number one is the attitudinal change, whether it can bring about, how can it be brought about right in the prison or otherwise, whether that attitudinal change can help to reduce criminality. We can talk something about it. Attitudinal change, as far as our theory as well as research is concerned, it has been proved time and again that you can bring about a change in the attitude of the individual. How can you do it? There are many, I do not want to go into details right now. One simple example is, supposing you have a negative attitude towards a particular community. Now, how do I change it? One of the researchers conducted, I think many of you would have also lived and lived it, had done it, who had taken that group along with the other group against whom they have this prejudice and brought them together in one place, made them do things together, made them work together and made them understand each other so that stereotype that they had about the other group vanished. As a result, the attitude changed towards that community, more in terms of positive orientation rather than negative. Another important thing that one of you asked was, if there are many people in a group involved, and if we say that individually we have to treat them, I'll tell you in the clinical area what we do is, we have two kinds of treatment for this kind of case. One is in group we take them, another we also take them individually. Now in a group, when you put all the people together, where one is morally high, one is morally low, another has done all kinds of violence, another has not done it. Many kinds of people are brought together and they discuss with each other what they have done and why they have done and what has been the reason behind it. And each one discusses the whole thing with the moderator, with the clinical psychologist, who is able to moderate and see that they all inculcate a particular kind of a value system where they will not indulge in this crime if even such circumstances make them compelled to do so. Another thing is, we don't take them only in group, we also take them individually, because the moment we go into a clinical setting or in a jail setting, we take all those people who are being referred to us. First we take them individually, we take their entire history, what has all happened, and then we put them together who or we feel will be appropriate in the group, and then take up sessions in the group. So both are normally used, particularly another interesting thing that has come up in the recent years is what we call the art therapy. Many times they do not have much scope to express themselves in different ways. So we ask them, okay, you go draw what you want. Now through drawing, they are able to express themselves what they were going through. In fact, I would like to give you a very interesting example of this, where one of the prisoners was asked to draw, and he had drawn a kind of a person going into a hole, very black hole, he is being drawn into it, and he is asking for help, putting his hand out and asking for help. Now this was so, as we went into the detail, we came to know that how much he was feeling completely depressed, could not do anything, could not help, could not express himself, because the home situation, the job situation, or wherever he was, it was in such a bad condition that he had to take an action which is a violent action, and so he was put into. Now this kind of art